Hi,
Hello, friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today in this CEO coffee chat. Hello, friends out there. My name is Dr. Angela Glymph. My pronouns are she, her. I am the CEO of Pure Health Exchange, and I am just so thrilled today to host the CEO coffee chat. And I am joined by an amazing leader, Bishop Howard, who is the director of Broadway Youth Center, working in partnership with the Howard Brown Health Center. Thank you so much for being here today. We are here to really celebrate and uplift liberation. I want to acknowledge that we had just ended Mental Health Awareness Month last month. And for us at PHE, it is really about liberation. Yesterday was Juneteenth, which is now a federal holiday. And so when we dig in, I would love to hear how you celebrated Juneteenth. But for us at Pure Health Exchange, Bishop, we were intentional about celebrating liberation. So our celebration is going to be on Friday. Our offices are closed. And we intentionally set that date because it sort of straddles in between Juneteenth, which we know is a historic moment in history and commemorates the emancipation of enslaved Black Americans throughout America. And then what's coming next is, of course, the anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, which sparked modern movement in LGBTQ plus rights. So we want to really, on the heels of those important points in history, we want to actually talk about equity, and we want to highlight the role that health equity plays in continued liberation and education, specifically in the LGBTQ plus community. So we have you today. I'll just say a little bit about you before we dive in. But Bishop Howard, they, them pronouns, is a licensed clinical social worker who has been working at the intersection of youth development, LGBTQ plus liberation, and behavioral health for nearly a decade. Um, Bishop is a Detroit native, currently serves as the director of Broadway Youth Center, a program of Howard Brown Health, which is serving LGBTQ plus youth experiencing housing instability, which we know is a big and unfortunate pervasive problem, and homelessness in Chicago, Illinois. And just a little bit about Howard Brown. Howard Brown Health is rooted in LGBTQ plus liberation. Howard Brown Health provides affirming healthcare and mobilizes for social justice. They are agents of change for individual well-being and community empowerment. And the Broadway Youth Center is a safe and affirming space for Chicago youth 12 to 24 years of age of all gender expressions and identities, offering free HIV, STI testing, drop-ins, educational programs, and resources. And I know we have a lot of young people in Chicago that we're reaching. So young people out there from Chicago, check out the amazing work that the Broadway Youth Center is doing and offering. So without further ado, let's dive in. So first of all, again, thank you. Thank you for taking time to be here. I want to just talk a little bit about your role, and what are some of the challenges and opportunities you notice that LGBTQ plus youth are facing at this moment.
Yes. Well, once again, thank you for having me, Angela. I'm so happy to be here and to, have this conversation with you. I would say, like, in my role, let's see, I'll start with the challenges, right? So I would say the challenges that I'm noticing when it comes to young people, it really is like being heard, right? Being heard and being believed. I think just as a nation, we discount young people's ability to understand their own needs and like their own desires and to know who they are. And so I think that, like, that's we see that showing up in the way that young queer and trans people access medical care, the way that they access education, right? It's just people, it's just constantly this I have to prove to someone else that this is who I am. And it's just people aren't being listened, or young people aren't being listened to, and they aren't being understood or believed. And I think on the kind of like flip side of that, when we're looking at opportunities, I think the access to education that young people have right now is amazing, right? Like, I think that when I was growing up as a young person, I didn't know where to go to find information about queerness or sexual health, or queerness that, or sexual health that was specific to queerness, right? And so now that information is very, if you know where to look, right, the information is there. Like with what we're doing with social media, with TikTok, there's so much education, and young people are really able to access that right now, which I think is a great opportunity for them.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, I definitely have observed in my work some of the similar challenges and opportunities that you spoke about. I'll kind of start backwards and start with sort of the opportunities. To your point, there are places like Broadway Youth Center at Howard Brown, right? There are places, Peer Health Exchange. There are places that are actually affirming, including, believing LGBTQ plus youth. So for me, that's definitely progress. I can tell you, I mean, I won't disclose my age, but I'll just say this. I was a teenager in the early 90s, and we didn't even have we didn't even mention LGBTQ. We didn't have and let alone sexual health. I don't even want to, that's a whole nother story. But, we didn't even, I mean, the sexual health education that I got was, I don't think it was affirming or inclusive of anybody, to be quite honest. And so to see that progress really is where I would say we're headed in the right direction for sure. And the fact, like I said, there are many, many more resources available for LGBTQ plus young people to be affirmed, to be affirmed, to be believed, and to actually get health that is specific to their unique experiences is wonderful, and it's great, and it's accessible, right? Like, it's online, and it is in their communities. So that is great. I would say the challenge that really has unearthed for us, I mean, we knew this, but we're actually seeing it, is that, for Peer Health Exchange, a lot of our in-person work is grounded or in cities, progressive cities, that, have a lot more resources, and I would just say attitudes around, affirming attitudes that, inclusive health is needed. But what we're seeing is we're able to reach young people in places and in communities where it's just really not safe for them to even disclose their identity. So we're starting there with some young people. And so while we have, again, being online sort of breaks geographical barriers in that way, but for me, it's just really shedding a light that progress looks different in a lot of different places in this country. So for me, that's sort of like a big challenge that we're seeing. And we'll get into this a little bit, but I would also say, since we're sort of on the heels of mental health awareness, the staggering statistics just around how mental health challenges have really increased and exacerbated for LGBTQ plus youth specifically. Like, when we're seeing, suicide ideation rates nearly doubling for these young people, and reports of more anxiety, more depression, more isolation and loneliness, which, 3 years ago, folks were blaming it on the pandemic. And it was like, oh, well, when the world opens up, everything will be better for everyone. And actually, that's not what we're seeing. And then specifically when we're looking at this specific population, that to me presents a new and troubling challenge. I think that is unique to these young people. So that for us at Pure Health Exchange is what we're noticing and observing.
Absolutely. Yeah. The mental health rates are just, mental health is impacting people in general so much right now. And then when you have, so few I would say, therapists who can relate with some of the young people. That makes it even really harder for them to want to go find somebody to talk to.
That's so true. That's true. So true. And that to me is sort of a big need. We know we both have psychology backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it heartened me to know that about you and to hear that, because people who look like us still is underrepresented in that space. And then when you layer on sort of a cross section of different identities, that representation is even smaller. So I definitely would say young people looking to those careers. I am definitely accessible to speak all about more about my career pathway and trajectory, and why it's so important to have diversity in mental health professions. Is so needed and still needed. And so, yeah, that is definitely important. So thank you for highlighting that. So I want to know, how does your organization lend itself to liberation of LGBTQ plus young people?
Yeah, we really try to be as low threshold for young people as we can when it comes to youth accessing services. And I think we also work to make sure that all of our services feel inclusive.
Yes.
Right? Both of like how people present, or even just what their needs are. So, right, like when we are talking to young people, we're making sure that we know what their pronouns are, and we're respecting what those pronouns are, regardless of if they were different yesterday, right, or if the name was different yesterday. Like, we're okay, absolutely, we believe young people when they show up and tell us who they are, right, and we listen to them when they tell us what they need, right. They need bus cars, they need clothes, they need food, right. Like, those are the things that we are centering when we do our programming, and making sure that they know that they can come in and get those services in a space that welcomes, right, every part of their identity, or even folks who aren't sure what their identity are, or just need some support. Right. And this is a place that feels safe for them. They might not have put that language to who they are, but they know that, like, this is a space that, regardless of who I am, I can go to and I can be served. And I think we really try to lean into that here.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think for us, it really is about the affirmation, the affirming, and being inclusive, whether we're in the classroom, whether we're online, right? It is very critical and important to us that young people who engage peer health exchange, however they find us and engage with us, that one, they see themselves, they see representation, they can actually see that we take diversity and inclusion very seriously, and that they can identify. So that is very important to us. So similarly, use of and respect for pronouns, even in materials that we have, that we are making sure that we are sort of challenging heteronormative, sort of the heteronormative standards, and really broadening, so that, again, young people in scenarios that we have in the classroom, that they are seeing young people, situations that we talk about that are really reflective of their experience. That is very important. And who they interact with on our staff, in the classroom, again, that there is someone that they feel like they can connect to, or an experience that they connect to. That is very meaningful, and that is very important to us. And to be honest, Bishop, sometimes, we get calls and letters, from adults or, schools that, you think you're going a little too far, but we understand, right? And this is one of sort of the values that we placed around our DEI work, is that it is very critical, because we understand how critical identity is to health, that all identities are affirmed, they are seen, and they're included in what we do. So that's really sort of our way of supporting a liberation for all young people, but specifically, we know how the specific and unique challenges and sort of barriers and hurdles we have to climb to do that for LGBTQ plus young people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So a lot of young people, especially young people who join us on these lives, they want to know a little bit about us. So yeah, they're very interested in knowing more about our guests. So I do have a little bit of a personal
Okay.
question. First, starting with why do you do what you do?
Hmm. You know, I, as cliche as it sounds, I do feel very drawn to this work, right? I
Mhm.
think a part of me just kind of fell into it as like, you know, studying psychology and studying like LGBT studies, and also just having my own, background as a queer young person who felt very siloed, who didn't have information, who didn't know who to talk to, and felt very alone, right? Like at, at some point felt just started to feel very driven to make sure that like other people weren't experiencing that, or other young people didn't have to go through that, right? Like that other young people knew that there was someone out there who understood them and could like relate, and then I just think it just kind of snowballed from there. You're in job after job, and before you know it, you're like in leadership. And it's
Right.
like,
Right.
but yeah, I really enjoy it. I love being able to feel fully myself when I
That's
come
amazing.
into work, right? And not having to worry as much about like not feeling seen, or,
Mhm.
me showing up as who I am, not being accepted. I think that that's a beautiful feeling, and getting to, I think, just display that, right? Like the importance of just, well, we understand the importance of just like seeing someone, even if you never speak to someone, right? Like the importance of seeing someone who looks like you, feeling confident, looking confident, and displaying who they are is just so important. I just want to continue to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, I love that. That is so powerful. I mean, I think I have a similar motivation. I often reflect in about just, how did I get here? And
Yeah.
I think I've been on this path actually as a young person, to be honest. I mean, I have been doing equity work even before I really understood what equity
Mhm.
meant.
Mhm.
I've just been doing it for such a long time, and in starting as a young person. And I really credit, my parents and grandparents, because they too were doing equity work before, it became a thing, right? They were
Right.
just doing it
Mhm.
because they just wanted and believed that all people deserved a better quality of life, and whatever they could do to aid in that, they were going to do it. And my grandparents, and specifically, they didn't have a lot of education, they didn't have a lot of money, they weren't wealthy people, but they were just humans and believed in humanity. And so whatever that looked like to advance equity, that's just what they did. And so that's what I grew up in and just seeing. And so I guess it's sort of a part of my DNA. Like, it doesn't have to take a lot of money. I mean, that helps, resources help, right? But it
Always.
doesn't have to necessarily take that. Sometimes it just
Mhm.
takes just to observe, just to
Mhm.
be awake and to be present and to observe. And then when you get that feeling of like, this isn't right, then you do something within your wheelhouse, and whatever that,
Mhm.
however your wheelhouse, whatever is in your wheelhouse, you just kind of activate and you just do something. So that is sort of like the grounding or foundation of why I do. But then, like you, if I look at my work and professional experiences, they've all been rooted in advancing either educational equity or health equity, or the
Mhm.
intersection of the two. And I've just kind of stayed in this place because I guess, like you, it just feels like a calling
Mhm.
at this point. And so, yeah, so that's why I do it. And I do it whether I'm getting paid or not paid to do it. It's just like you said, it's just something that's just in you, and to the point that it feels like a calling. So yeah, so that's
Mhm.
what it is. That's what it is for me. And so, looking at your job, so you're the director of this amazing center.
Mhm.
What do you love the most about your job?
Let's see. What do I love the most? I think just, I think there's like a surprise every day. Right. I think there's something like new every day, and it kind of just keeps me on my toes. And, I just kind of have to always be prepared for whatever. And I think that that's just kind of like the nature of youth work, right? Like young people are always going to have something for you. And I think being able to like see the start and the finish, right? Like you,
Yeah.
or not necessarily the finish, but like the next step, right? Like being able to see these young people come in and have various struggles and have all of these needs that they need met, and just see them taking care of things, right? Like it might not always be as quick as like people would want, right? But like just seeing them take one step, seeing them handle one thing, fill out, this one benefits application, apply for like housing in this one place, right? Like just seeing them slowly start to see that they can do these things, right? Like even if no one ever taught them to, that these are things that they can overcome if they continue, right? And have the proper support around them, I think, right? Being able to see that and just have those moments to laugh with them. Like they always have something to say, always got a joke to crack, or even just, I feel like, they say kids say the darndest thing, but I just think that never stops, like in the whole just range of what we consider as young people. They just always have something to say to make me laugh.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think similarly, it's really the young people. It's the impact. It's like, you
Mm-hmm.
have your mission statement, and you're fired up about the vision that you want to see in the world, and you set your focus of what, the organization is all about and what you're going to focus on, and then to actually like see that happen. So when you start to see the impact of the work, I mean, that is like the best and most rewarding part of what I get to do. And then sometimes it's like the unexpected impact. So it's not like the
Mm-hmm.
direct impact that you set out to make, but it's sort of the, when you get the emails from, a young person that was a part of, like for us, our inaugural youth advisory board, who then is like, yeah, I'm about to graduate from college and I'm actually going to have a
Yeah.
career in public health, and I'm
Oh,
gonna like do health equity work because of this experience with your organization. Like that warms my heart. Or I
mm-hmm.
get like invites, like we have young people, I mean high school students that are starting their own podcasts, right? Because they're amplifying their voice around health and health equity, and they're like, I want you to be my guest on my own podcast. And I'm like, whoa, like these are young, like these are young high school
Yeah.
students that are just fired up about health, and like that part of the work is sort of like the unintended but beautiful gifts. And so it makes those hard days worth it, because it's like, oh no, that's where we're trying to go.
Mm-hmm.
So when those moments happen, I would say that definitely, that warms my heart. What's the most challenging thing about your job? I,
I
I know.
think
Try to narrow it down to one.
I think that like the higher you get in like this leadership type of like ladder structure, the farther you start to move away from like the thing that got you into it, right? Which is usually the young people, right? I think that I feel very lucky that like I can like go upstairs and interact with the young people, pretty often. But I think that like, in those times when like we're really busy, right? We have to do all those admin things. We got to be out talking to funders. We got to get money. We got to, do all of these things. It just takes you so far away from that. And I think that that's really hard sometimes. It can feel like a disconnect, and you have to kind of like work very hard to find your own way to connect into it, or get to see the young people and ground yourself in like what started you here, because it can make it really hard sometimes when you start to feel very
Yes.
distant from it. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, I resonate so much with all of what you're saying. Absolutely. It's the administrative business side of
Mm-hmm.
this mission oriented work
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that can be the most challenging, but honestly, very important,
Mm-hmm.
because in order to continue to do what we know we
Absolutely.
have to do for these young people, you gotta cross your T's and dot your I's.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like to cross my T's and dot my I's all the time. I'd rather be engaging with the young people. Exactly. But
Mm-hmm.
that is the part that can bring some challenge. Well, as we are wrapping up, and again, as I started at the top of this meeting, it's about liberation. We're
Yeah.
in Liberation Month, with the celebration and commemorations of both Juneteenth, and we're in Pride Month. And so, my question to you is, how are you celebrating both Pride and Juneteenth this year?
Yeah, I think personally it's all about taking up space for me.
Good.
For both Pride and Juneteenth. It's, being out where I want to be, like enjoying space and community, being around the people
Mhm.
that I love. I think, Chicago is like summer's the best time to be in Chicago, and this is when everybody comes to Chicago to visit, and so it's always like, all of my people are here, my chosen family,
Nice.
and I think that taking up that space is gonna just be at the forefront of my mind, right, this whole month. And for our young people, it's really like educating and making sure that they know, right, why this is important, why is Juneteenth important, why is Pride Month important, like who are these people who fought, right? So that we could be here. What is the historical significance, so that they can be inspired to go out and take up space as well.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love the fact how you put it. I'm taking up space. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. I think that is so fitting when you think about liberation, right? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
liberated and I'm here and I'm going to take up space. I love that. I love
Mm-hmm.
that. For me, so a couple of things. I think I am I am a mom of a young son. And so I think for me, it's all about educating him
Mm-hmm.
and for him to understand both of these movements. I think is very important. Specifically around pride, it for me, it's about, you know, I'm cultivating an ally, like, and so that to me is, I take that role and job very seriously. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, so I have the benefit of access to
Mm-hmm.
free Smithsonian
Yeah.
museums that
Mm-hmm.
are commemorating and celebrating both of these powerful movements in history. So, folks out there who are listening and you have young kiddos in your life, so there's two things. One is the Smithsonian actually have online resources. So if you can't get to DC, they do have online resources. It's called Pride Family Zone,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot of like activities that you can do with young people in your lives. There's some videos and there's some education materials just around why we
Mm-hmm.
celebrate pride, why it's important to be inclusive, giving that education around the Stonewall uprisings. So my kiddo and I have been spending a lot of time there,
Mm-hmm.
um, just learning, and I'm actually getting more education as well as I am trying to educate him. Juneteenth. So let's see. Juneteenth. So my older sister actually did her first sort of celebration. So we did our first Juneteenth sort of barbecue and celebration. We all had T-shirts
Oh.
at her home last weekend. So we did that last weekend. Again, the African American Museum, that is about 8 years old now,
Mm-hmm.
in Washington, D.C. So we are planning as a family to spend a day there. There are lots of Juneteenth
Mm-hmm.
activities that's happening there. So very, very excited to do that. And then there are books. I mean, I just love like reading myself, but also learning with my kiddo. So Megan Madison is an author. If you have
Mm-hmm.
young people in your life, like little kiddos in your life, she has some amazing books on just inclusion. and how
Mm,
you talk about inclusion. And so we always, as a family, sort of refresh on that with our
yeah,
kid, just to make sure, again, it's about building a young ally
yeah.
in this space. And then me learning how to be a stronger ally as well.
Mhm,
And so
mhm,
I'm always open to learning in that way. So that's
mhm.
what we have today. Thank Bishop. Thank you so much. First of all, for the work that you're doing, for being who you are, for being
Mm,
the leader that you are, and for just inspiring and just supporting young people
mhm.
across the country, specifically LGBTQ plus young people. They need you. They need Broadway. They need Howard Brown. They need your leadership. So thank you so much for all that you do, and thank you for making time and space for us to have the CEO chat. And thank you all.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
all to the
you. Thank
audience and the
you.
listeners out there. We really appreciate your time.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Had a great time. Thank you for just the series and for uplifting these messages and for the work that you are
Thank
doing as well.
you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right. Well, you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful month of liberation and find ways to take up space as Bishop has challenged all of us to do.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.